Welcome to New Life Live with host and founder of New Life Ministries, Stephen Arterburn. New Life is celebrating its 30th year of ministry this year, 30 years of transforming lives one at a time, thanks to the giving hearts of you, our listeners. New Life Live is dedicated to helping you in life's hardest places. If you have a question you'd like to ask today, our phone lines are open. Call 1-800-229-3000. That number again is 1-800-229-3000. Now here's Steve.
Okay, welcome to New Life Live. This is Larry Sonnenburg. Steve is not feeling well. 2 days in a row he's under the weather. So we need to say a little prayer for Steve today. If you would do that for us, we'd appreciate that. I'm blessed today. You folks will have I'm sitting in the middle of two of the most spiritually beautiful people, Dr. Sheri Keffer.
Hey, great to be here.
Dr. Alice Benton.
Hello, you too. Hi, everybody.
So we're going to have a good day. It's kind of a funny thing because today's a special program that we're doing on the topic of depression. And we want to highlight to some degree our book, Understanding and Loving a Person with Depression. But that's such a serious topic. And we like to have a little fun here and there during this program, and I don't know if that's going to be as possible today as it might be other days or not, but we're going to make this a good day and a good topic of discussion. I might just open it up with a question for you guys and pardon the term guys, I get a little...
we're good with it. Okay. We can roll with it, Larry.
All
we
right.
know who we are.
Thank you. I don't want to get bopped upside the head.
Yeah, Alice just might do that.
Well, maybe just start about this book. In the Arterburn series, Understanding and Loving a Person with Depression. Why is it good? You know, we deal with usually the people who have the depression, and this series is different. It's for people that live with them or are connected with them. Well, tell me why that's so important.
Well, I would say that I think we have natural tendencies that come out of love trying to help people that are hurting. But oftentimes, despite our best intentions, the ways that we try to help may not actually be helpful. Mm-hmm. Trying to talk people out of their depression or tell them, no, you're okay, everything's fine, you don't have to worry about it. Although that comes naturally, it doesn't get to the heart of the person and the heart of the matter. And so this book and these series give us better techniques, better approaches where we can come alongside the person suffering from depression, hear them out, be empathic to them. And that helps more in the long run than trying to convince them that things are okay. They're going to be fine.
Before I ask Sheri you to continue on that, I just want to remind our folks, we're going to be here 3 hours doing radio. And our phone number is 800-229-3000. This hour, if you know somebody who's depressed, fights depression, clinical or otherwise, give us a call. We want to talk to you. Anything you would add to what Alice had to say?
Yeah, one thing I really, really love about this book is the late Brenda Hunter, Dr. Hunter. She not only experienced depression herself, but her husband had a head injury, and he went through depression. So she's been on both sides, right? And there's something about reading a book, about depression. You go, okay, I've got all the facts. But she actually takes us deeper into what it's like from both angles. And I think that's the real benefit to her book with Steve.
Yeah. And I just want to add, it's a little sad because Dr. Hunter passed away just at the time the book was being released. She died of pneumonia, and so we were looking forward to having her on for a show like this.
Yeah.
But we have two of the best sit-ins you could possibly find.
Well, and I think we can really honor her and honor her legacy today by having you call in and just ask the questions. If you're frustrated and struggling with someone who's in your home who's depressed and you don't know what to do, or if you struggle with depression, call in.
Right. Thank you.
Don't wait.
Thank you. So 1-800-229-3000. And when you call in and you're dealing with somebody with the topic of depression, we want to give you a copy of this book. We have some books to give away, and it's a really good book. We'll be back right after this, more discussion and your calls.
To find out more information about New Life or to order any of the resources mentioned on today's program, call 1-800-NEW-LIFE. Now back to New Life Live.
Okay, welcome back. Larry Sonnenburg sitting in for Steve Arterburn today, and I've got Dr. Alice Benton and Dr. Sheri Keffer with me. Yeah, I want to ask one more question before we go to a call. What's the difference between feeling depressed and clinical depression?
I would say that it has to do with some of the symptoms and how long they last and how much they impair a person. So some level of depression is natural for all of us, especially as we go through the lows of life. But when it really starts to impair our functioning, that's one of the clinical phrases that we look for, whether it's impaired in relationships, at work, we can't get out of bed, we can't do what we need to do on a daily basis, and it lasts for at least 2 weeks. Those are some of the signs that it's crossed the line into clinical depression.
Okay. Well, let's go and talk to Josh. He's on line 2. And Josh is in Salem, New Hampshire, listens to WEZE. That's the Boston area, isn't it?
Yes.
How can we help you, Josh?
Well, I was wondering what the symptoms or the signs were, of depression. And that's kind of why I was calling.
Do you want to share anything about signs or symptoms you're having before they answer that question, just so we can relate it to you personally?
Well, I don't really think I'm having any, but
Okay.
I'm trying to get my hands around this for a friend.
Okay.
Who basically,
Good. Well, that's perfect.
Something isn't right. Yeah.
So a friend you really care about, and it can feel, I don't know if you experience this, Josh, but it can feel really helpless when we're in a relationship with someone, and especially if they're stuck in depression, if they're not knowing how to get treatment, if they're not knowing what to do. So as Alice mentioned, it's really when they're looking at major depression, it's a book called the DSM-5, and it's a diagnostic manual for the folks doctors and therapists that work in the world of mental health. And she's right, it's a 2-week period of time. And really what you're looking for is kind of a depressed mood or a low mood that happens during that period of time, over a 2-week period. Weight gain, difficulty sleeping, low self-esteem, just really feeling hopeless, not able to function like they would normally function. Those are some of the classic signs that you'll see. Withdrawing, pulling away from others, Larry, you're right. And so those are things to look for. What are you seeing in your friend?
Some of that. And basically, this guy's a pretty bright guy, so he's wondering if he can take some kind of blood testing to determine whether or not levels, in his, serotonin levels, etc., are normal. And he's trying to look at this thing more medically, I think, than anything. And it's kind of upsetting, because it's just not working out. I mean, the more I see him, the worse it seems to be progressing. But, you can't tell people what to do. If they want to get treatment, they'll get treatment. You encourage that. But one of my questions while I got you guys is, can you determine through a blood test if you're dealing with depression?
So there are some tests that have been created, I want to say within the last few years, that a psychiatrist can give to somebody in order to see what their brain has an affinity for. So there's certain psychotropic medications that can help certain brain types. And they used to do a lot of guesswork. And now there's actually a test that they can give that can kind of show a proclivity. Now, this is not something that would really work well with my brain, or this is something that could work well. So I might, as a friend, ask him, would you be open, since you're looking at this from a medical position, right, to go in and see a psychiatrist to see if they could give you a test to check out what your brain might respond to better in light of treatments.
So are either of you aware of a simple blood test, as he was asking? That
Simple blood test, I don't believe you can really test depression in a simple blood test. The only one I mentioned is a newer one.
Yeah.
I wish I knew what it was called, but I know it's out there because it's been kind of a fast track for some folks I've been working with.
I just heard anecdotally from a physician that you can test for serotonin levels and dopamine levels by a blood test.
Okay.
I only heard it from one physician, though. I've never seen that written, but I think it's certainly worth looking into. And Josh, I want to add a couple of thoughts to what Sheri already told you. Just 3 other symptoms of depression to look for with your friend, and one will give you an idea of the severity and if your friend is at risk, which is morbid thoughts of wanting to die, or thoughts of wanting to take his life. It's not uncommon for people with major depression to begin to have those thoughts and even to begin formulating a plan. And what's very vicious about depression is that it tends to go hand in hand with isolation and with doing less. And it's a vicious cycle because then people feel worse as they draw away from their friends, from their relationships, and they can get stuck in these morbid or suicidal thoughts. So as it sounds like you and your friend maybe have talked a little bit about this perhaps, or at least you're observing these signs in him. Have you addressed your concerns with your friend?
Oh, absolutely.
You have.
Absolutely. I think the issue would be, it sounds like it's pretty simple, but how do you get somebody to a therapist, a psychiatrist? The little I know, they're very difficult to find, and they're booked out, long periods of time before you can even get an appointment with most of these people. So maybe this can get resolved with his PCP. Maybe that same medical test can be ordered with his PCP and give him the peace of mind he's looking for, and get him diagnosed either way.
Well, and I can appreciate that. I'm just looking up it because Alice is such a smarty pants. New blood and urine test finds 5 distinct types of depression. So you're right, Alice. But let me tell you this. I get the fact that it can take sometimes some weeks to get in. And if you think he's in crisis, like he's going to harm himself, absolutely he needs to get into his PCP. He needs to get into somebody. But oftentimes we'll go to a general practitioner who doesn't have the same level of training as somebody who's a doctor of the brain. Psychiatrists are basically brain doctors, and they're a different breed. And so I would just encourage him to put his name on the list. Before you know it, that date will come around. And I think you're doing a great job of just trying to encourage him into help.
One last suggestion.
Well, my final question would be: does New Life have a website where there are some, referrals to Christian psychiatrists?
we don't have a psychiatrist referral, but that doesn't mean that we can't do a little research and see if we can find one for you as well.
Well, and Josh, we have a counselor network, a Christian counselor network. Yeah. And what's so beautiful about it is when you make a donation to New Life, you get the names of 3 clinicians in the area that your friend lives. And if you would be willing to look into that for him, you could offer him 3 names, 3 numbers, and the first session is free. And so he would get to shop around. And because depression does tend to isolate us, we lose motivation, we lose energy, it can be really hard to reach out to make that appointment. If you offer that gift to your friend, you're right, you can't make him accept it, but it might make him a lot more likely to accept an appointment and take that step.
And often it's often counselors know of the psychiatrist to refer to.
Yes, you're right,
great
Larry.
point.
So it's
like I got my 2 or 3 in the area that I know and trust and all of that. We all have to have that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Josh, thanks so much for calling.
Great
we appreciate that. And we're going to send you a copy of the book, Understanding and Loving a Person with Depression. So let's go on and take another call. Let's talk to Susan. Susan's in Washington, D.C., listens to us on WAVA, W-A-V-A.
Hello.
Hi, Susan. How can we help you?
Hi, how are you all today?
We're doing
Good.
really well.
Yeah.
But
Good.
tell us why you're calling.
The greatest. I always think you guys are the greatest.
Thank
all
you.
of you. And hope Steve feels better today.
She said you guys
Thanks,
too.
Susan.
Okay.
My question is, so I have 3 kids, but my second daughter, she tells me she suffers from panic disorder and whatever that other thing is. I'm so sorry, I always forget. That, and she has a boyfriend. They're living together, and he suffers from, I think, some very severe depression as well. He's on some kind of medication, but his other issue is that he's in this mode in his brain where he doesn't know if he's he or she. And my daughter and I have had like severe arguments because I made the mistake of calling him a he instead of a she, and I was very stern about saying he's a he, and she got very mad at me. So, so I don't know. I can never tell when she's actually going through her thing of depression or the panic thing when I'm with her. And I was just wondering if there's something else I can do to be more sensitive to that, things I can maybe look for, because I really just can't tell. And for him, if a door should open for me to be able to say something to him, because basically all I'm doing is praying for them really right now. And she's also expecting a baby from him. And I also want to know if it's possible that could pass on to the baby. So that's my question. I hope that helps.
Susan, how would you describe just briefly your relationship with your daughter today? Was that situation resolved where she was so upset with you for calling her boyfriend a he?
I know that we got back on speaking terms, and then we're back to not speaking terms, and it was over some. Was helping her temporarily with some auto insurance and some phone until she could get her own policy, and then I don't know what happened. She just got, I can only say confused, thinking that she wasn't gonna. It just seemed like she didn't want to pay it, and so she got really angry, and we went back and forth about it. I got upset and said some things. And then she and one of the things I said to her made her the impression apparently that she thought I called her a bad mother, but I didn't. So I wrote her a letter, and I sent it to her, and I'm just waiting to see what her response will be for that. But at this point, there's no speaking terms going on.
And are you still supporting her?
Without me going through the whole thing.
Are you still supporting her financially in those areas?
Yes, she asked me to, and that is why the argument started. And then she asked me to again, and I was like, okay, but you need to get your own policy. And I don't know why, but.
So what can she do to help her daughter with this boyfriend?
Well, I am not sure you're going to like my answer because it's probably a tougher answer, Susan. I think the reason there's conflict with you is because we've got a couple that's having a baby and they're trying to set up their own homestead, and yet you are being asked to support them financially when really they need to be self-supporting. Mm-hmm. If they're looking to set up this homestead and they're having a baby, at some point they need to grow up and be responsible. But if you continue to provide for them financially, it's as if you're making it really comfortable for them to live in their frustration and confusion. And sometimes we can do that as parents because we love them and we think that's the only way that they're going to stay connected to us. But really, I think she needs to be in and sit in this really painful situation she's got in. She's in a relationship with someone who doesn't know if he's a man or a woman. She's having his baby. So can you see how that would create panic in any human being?
Not only is he confused, but now she's even more confused.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so,
well, that's what I was feeling too. Is that she's maybe getting more confused because she's joined with him, like in a more soulish level and spiritual level.
I get it.
So
But
that's kind of
sometimes,
going over.
sometimes confusion and fear and panic wake us up to what's not working.
We'll be right back.
We'd love to hear from you. If you have a question or a comment, call toll-free 1-800-229-3000. Now back to New Life Live.
Okay, we're back. Alice, you had a closing thought here for Susan.
Susan, I have 3 considerations to give you. You had asked about the baby and if there's a risk for depression, and there does seem to be a genetic component to depression. So if you can stay connected with your daughter, even to be able to keep an eye on the baby in the future and be a healing force in that child's life, that baby will need you. He will need his grandmother. And the other 2 are, I hope you have safe, supportive believers around you with whom you can bounce ideas and check your motivation, check what your daughter is asking of you so that you can continue to get wise counsel, because this is very confusing. It's tough to know how to love her well. The third is, similar to our previous caller, would you offer therapy for your daughter, particularly in consideration of her pregnancy and of this baby coming? Would you be willing perhaps to schedule a first session and offer that to her as a gift for her and for the baby? So just take those into prayer. Think about them. It may be a way to love your daughter well.
Thank you, Susan, for calling. And we want to send you a copy of this book, too, Understanding and Loving a Person with Depression. You know, when you make a gift to New Life this month, we give another Understanding and Loving a Person book as our thank you, and that is Loving and Understanding a Person with Alcohol or Drug Addiction. And that was written by Dr. Dave Stoop and Steve Arterburn, and that's some incredible, wonderful wisdom in that book. I hope you'll make a gift, because we have a matching fund going right now. $235,000. We had a group of donors that pulled their money and said, would you please express this as a challenge to the bigger audience in New Life? So if you would make a gift today, it'll be doubled. We need your support. This is an important month for us to get back on top of some things, and it all means more ministry, more help for people like you're hearing on these calls. Okay, let's go to Theresa in Louisville, Kentucky. She listens on WFIA. Hello, Theresa.
Hello, how are you today?
We're doing good. How can we help you?
Well, the Lord had me listen to this radio show. I like to listen to it quite often. And today I had my radio on as I came home and heard what you all were talking about. And just wanted to really encourage Josh that called earlier, but also anybody that's listening that has a friend or a loved one with depression. I'm so glad to hear now that they have a blood test that tells you kind of, I don't want to say what type it is, but what medication will help you. I lost a son 5 years ago today who had anxiety and depression.
Oh, Theresa.
So sorry.
Well, thank you. But did not know Jesus, so he did not have hope. And I've learned so much about depression since then that I wish I had known before.
Sure.
So I want to encourage Josh or anyone listening how important it is to, yes, we don't want to step on everybody's toes, but if I see anyone now that I think has that, I will take that risk.
Oh, good for you.
Because sometimes if you don't get involved, and also like you all were recommending, he found some psychiatrist in the area for his friend. Mm-hmm. That was one thing that my son, with the anxiety and depression, he couldn't be still, wouldn't be still, or whatever it was. He could not focus on trying to look things up and call and find out if they would, give him an appointment or they didn't. So if other people could come around and help with things like that might seem minute to sometimes people with anxiety and depression, it's a large.
That is such wise counsel. Community is what is so important in so many issues in life, and depression is a huge one in that regard.
Sometimes
Yeah.
I'm hearing, Theresa, our greatest learnings come out of looking back and reflecting at what didn't happen. And I, as a mom who lost her son, right to that, I know everybody's really listening to you, and they're thinking about someone right now that they know that, because depression is tricky, anxiety is tricky. People pull away, and so we kind of mirror that. We pull away too. We feel helpless and powerless. We feel afraid about pressing in, and sometimes when we do press in, they get mad.
And we don't know what to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, they get mad, and
Yeah.
so we feel as stuck as they do. But what I hear you saying is, don't stop. What helped you in the aftermath? Did he take his life?
Yes, he did.
Okay.
Yes, he did.
And we're so sorry about that. What in the aftermath of that really helped you? What were some things that people did to help you move through the suicide and help you deal with your loss?
Well, just friends and family coming around me, but I also took a grief counseling
Yeah,
or
true.
grief class. I call it a grief class at church.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a lifesaver for me. I didn't see how that could help because the pain was so unbearable. I didn't see how I could ever get over the pain of losing a child, which you don't.
You don't, yeah.
But God walks you through it. It's when you don't think you're going to get through it is when he picks you up and carries you through it.
There you go.
And just prayer and trusting God and good Christian friends and the counseling. The counseling did help me tremendously.
Yeah.
Well, you know what, Theresa? You did everything that we recommend for people.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's because of that you're able to call in today and offer wisdom and hope. We're proud of you.
Yeah, thank you so much. We just can't thank you enough. And it might seem too late, but I'm sure you know somebody that could benefit from this book. And so we're going to send you a copy of Understanding and Loving a Person with Depression. Stay tuned. We'll continue with the calls right after this.
We're glad you joined us for New Life Live. To be a part of the program, call 1-800-229-3000. Now back to New Life Live. This is Terry McIntosh, and if you're battling drug or alcohol addiction, New Life can help connect you to the treatment you need. And if someone you care about is refusing help, you can get help with an intervention. Call us at 1-800-NEW-LIFE, that's 639-5433, to find out more about treatment and interventions. And then Covenant Eyes is our partner in an internet filter for your computer, but it's more than just a simple filter. It's also an accountability tool that sends reports of your online activity to individuals that you choose. It provides reports for online activity on tablets and smartphones and computers, and you get your first 30 days free when you use the code NLM. Just look for the Covenant Eyes link on our website to get you started. Larry?
Okay, thank you, Terry. One other thing I wanted to bring up before we get to the call. Our featured resource this month is a book by Dr. Sheri Keffer, Intimate Deception, Healing the Wounds of Sexual Betrayal. So give us a call, and you can find that book online, or you can get it by calling 800-NEW-LIFE. We want to go back to the phones, and let's go to Stephanie. Stephanie is on line 7. Hello, Stephanie. You listen online. You're from Stephanie just dropped off.
Oh, maybe she'll call back.
Yeah, maybe so. But let's go to Robert in Dallas on line 2. No, where is Robert? There. Thank you, Terry. Okay, KWRD, you listen on, Robert. Thank you. How can we help you?
Hi. I'm wondering are there any similarities with depression in light of anxiety and panic attacks? Because I hear a lot about the terminology of depression. I don't hear much about panic attacks or anxiety. I'm a pastor here, and I'm working with a couple of different people, and sometimes it gets very difficult in trying to distinguish, some of these features here, anxiety, the panic attacks, and depression. Are they the same? Are they different in some sense?
They are considered to be separate disorders. Depression is one diagnosis and anxiety is another, and yet they often go hand in hand. I would say most of the people I've worked with in my therapy office, if they have depression, they tend to either have symptoms of anxiety or also have the whole diagnosis of anxiety as well. So you're right. We tend to see such a mix of the two, even though they're separate diagnoses.
And, you know, when it comes to brain parts, Robert, it does get complicated when you're talking with someone and you see both things in the room. But depression is often surrounds the limbic system in the brain. It's like mood control central. It helps people with their mood stability, whether their anger is internally or externally driven, dark thoughts, or shame beliefs that might be these old negative beliefs, wounds from the past, all that kind of gets stuck in that limbic system and needs to be processed. The panic and anxiety comes from a part of the brain called the basal ganglia, or even the cingulate gyrus. It's a different brain part, but Alice is exactly right. Sometimes I see that someone may have some negative beliefs, like, I'll give you a simple one, like, I'm not enough. I'm not good enough, or I can't trust anyone. Now, if I have that in my limbic system, it's going to make me worry about every person I'm in relationship with. Either I'm going to feel like I'm not enough, so I'm going to be anxious at my job, I'm going to be anxious with my spouse, I'm going to be anxious in my church with my pastor, and that anxiety plays into those negative thoughts. So it's like a deadly duo. They play off of each other. And in the book, Dr. Hunter talks about that cognitive behavioral therapy is actually one of the best forms of treatment for folks that are dealing with depression and anxiety. You know, outside of medication, right, we're talking about treatment. It's really having to address the pain and wounds of our past. We can't pray it away. I wish we could, but our brain gets stuck in this negative process, and so we need some deeper work than prayer. We can pray, but we gotta do the work and get into some deeper therapy.
Robert, as a pastor, I can imagine the types of things that you face with your people who come to you, and I want to make a suggestion. I haven't done this before, but I want to suggest that your church joins Club New Life, because two things. We'll send you 8 books. Each book is Understanding and Loving a Person With. And we have depression, alcoholism, bipolar. How come I can't think of them all? But there's 8 different issues. And I would think that'd be incredibly helpful to you. The other thing that you would have access to as a Club New Life member, it's $30 a month. I would hope a church budget could absorb that for you. But the other thing you would get is a video library. And this library of video
that would be great,
has
Larry.
amazing things. You think of a topic, and we're going to have it on there if it's not already there. And that would help you immensely. So just something for you to consider.
Sounds great.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
That sounds great.
And thanks for being
you.
on
I
the front
appreciate you
lines.
guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, you bet. You know, pastors are often the first ones
They are.
to see somebody that's dealing with something, and it can feel overwhelming, right?
Yeah.
So we appreciate all that they do out there. Yeah. And we also appreciate when they feel like it's kind of out of their scope, and then they refer out to a therapist that can really get in there and try to manage that. So.
Okay, we're going to try to get in another call in this segment, and this is Jennie in San Diego, listens on Sirius XM. Hello, Jennie. How you doing?
I've been better.
Yeah, I can imagine. Tell us what's going on.
Well, actually, as I was listening, something clicked in my head. Maybe, okay, see, I don't want to bring this part up, but I don't know, partly or something borderline, and I don't know if you can be slightly borderline, but I'm not as bad as I could be. But the point is, I was calling in about unresolved conflict and I think I now can figure it out. I feel abandoned, which is a big thing for, I know, borderline. I have a problem with unresolved conflict when people refuse to talk to me and work it out. And that was the history with my parents, and now I turn other people into parent figures, not on purpose, but if anybody pays extra amount of attention, I get this feeling that and then it seems like there's conflict. I don't know, I'm acting out or what, but I am distraught that they refuse to talk to me and work it out. And so I called because I am severely depressed because I've recently had this with a person and happened to be, well, I can't even say. But anyway, it's just, is that transference when I put something in that really was from my parents on somebody else?
Well, yeah, that can happen. It's called projection, actually. When you kind of like a projector to movie theater, you're having something that's really hurting your heart, and then we put it like a projector on somebody else. First off, I just want to say, I'm so sorry about your heart and that it's hurting so badly. And I love the fact that you chose to be really vulnerable with us and just bring it. I was praying for you as you started talking. I was like, I hope she just brings it. And you did. I think the confusing part with that pattern of bipolarity or borderline you were talking about is that the way we behave, right, the way you behave in a reactive stance because you're afraid somebody's going to reject you, it ends up pushing others away. They pull away, and then you feel more depressed because you don't want them to move away. But there's a dynamic between you and another person that keeps reenacting over and over again. And you end up not getting what you want, and they're disconnected from you. And we here at New Life don't believe that you have to be disconnected or that you have to divorce yourself from someone or be depressed, because we feel like there needs to be healing in how you're interacting with somebody else. But you're the only one that can help change the way that you're reacting. Does that make sense?
Yes, and sometimes people refuse to ever talk to me again, and that's the hardest part.
I bet it is. I bet it is. And if we could rewind the tape, sometimes I'll talk to folks I'm working with, and I'll say, okay, if I could rewind the tape and we were sitting down next to each other, what would I see? What would the dynamic be between you? And oftentimes when we unpack it, they begin to go, oh, yeah, I did that, or oh, yeah, I said that. And I said, okay, so what made you say that? Well, I was scared. I was scared they were going to, or I felt judged, or whatever it was. But it created a dust storm, and both people go into two corners. We don't want you to stay
in this
there.
last situation, I was sensing abandonment.
Yeah, of course. You're going to smell it before it happens because that desperation to connect. So we'd like to give you maybe a few things that could help you, interventions that maybe you could try with yourself to try to get some healing so you can make some better connections going forward.
Okay, we'll finish up and come back right after this and take one more call. So hold the line.
To find out more information about New Life or to order any of the resources mentioned on today's program, call 1-800-NEW-LIFE. Now back to New Life Live.
Okay, welcome back. Before we finish up with, who are we talking
With
to?
Jennie.
Jennie, thank you. I've lost it. I want to just remind folks, we're here 2 more hours. And so keep the calls coming, 1-800-229-3000. Those next 2 hours, we'll answer calls on topics other than depression. But if you're on hold and didn't get your depression call in, please stay on hold, and we'll continue to take your calls as well. So go ahead and help Jennie out.
Well, Jennie, Sheri was taking you so gently in the direction of looking at yourself as the possible common denominator in the relationship problems that you have. And you had such courage in even identifying yourself as possibly having borderline features. And something about all of us humans is that sometimes what we most want and need, we fight against receiving it. So I see this in my children. I'll give a very brief example. Sometimes when they most want my love and my physical comfort, they push me away. And we all can have the tendency to do that, where we almost mistreat the people that that we're in relationship with, and we push when we want them to come in closer to us. So I bring up this example because I want you to go to 3 safe people in your life that can both give you truth but do it in a loving way, and ask them for feedback to find out, how do you possibly push people away, or how do you possibly add to the conflict, because we can all learn to resolve conflict better, and that feedback will guide you in the right direction. But I also want you to consider therapy, because there are great therapies out there for anybody suffering from borderline personality disorder. One is called DBT, Dialectical Behavioral Therapy, and that really will equip you with exactly the problem that you're struggling with. It helps you figure out how to handle and manage relationship better. The last one is for you to consider whether or not you have safe people with whom you can grieve the loss of your relationships. You need to be heard, accepted, and held in your grief, because no matter how good you get at resolving conflict, you may still lose people. And so we need that support around us to grieve our way through those losses.
Jennie, thank you for calling. We will be sending you a copy, too, of this book, Understanding and Loving a Person with Depression, and I hope that helps. Okay, let's take our final call this hour, but hold on. If you didn't get through, we'll take your calls in the hour to come. Let's talk to Karen. Karen's on line 8. She's in Tyler, Texas, and listens on Sirius XM. How can we help you, Karen?
Hi there. I'm going to pull over. 1 second.
Okay. Don't want you to be so depressed that you do something foolish, so pull over.
Okay. Let me just park here. All righty.
Oh.
All right.
Okay, we can hear you well if you want to start.
Are you there?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Yes. Okay. So I'm calling about my mother-in-law. My husband and I have been married 30 years. She's not a believer. We've been praying for her forever. Recently, she lives in a different state, and about 15 hours from us, drop time. Anyway, about 2 years ago, my father-in-law passed away, and since that time, she always jokingly said, she's 70, so she's not very old, and she always jokingly said that, she would always go first. But she has continued to talk about taking her life. She's completely isolated herself. She believes that she has some type of blood disorder that's causing memory loss because she self-diagnosed herself. She won't accept, when we go up there, she'll see us maybe an hour or two, like the whole 3 or 4 days we're there, and then she says she's sick and doesn't want to see anybody. We have just, recently I wrote her a long letter and just told her how much I loved her, how much God loved her, and but I was really concerned for her, and she called my husband and said she was worried about me because oftentimes religious people don't like it when other people take their life. So we are just, we don't know how to help her. We pray for her every day. We've been praying for her every day our whole lives. But,
we get the picture. Let's see
so
what they have to say.
I think you need to be concerned. Remember Theresa on our call today, and she lost her son, right, to suicide. Right. She's giving you some very clear signs that she's contemplating not being here. And so I know that's probably not what y'all want to hear, but the first thing I would be having you do is really think about 15 hours away, and I know this is not going to be easy, but relocating her or helping to get her into some kind of a care facility where there's others there, a community. She can't be alone. She's not dealt with it well.
My brother-in-law,
okay.
I'm sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. My brother-in-law lives there, but...
Okay, but she needs more. She's telling you she needs more. It's not enough. She needs medical intervention. The foggy brain, the memory loss is a part of depression. She's probably...
She won't accept, she won't... I don't know if we need to legally step in because
she won't... You need to do whatever you need to do to get her help right now. I'm that scared. The last thing I would want to see is you guys have to show up at her place in 4 months from now and read the letter that you sent to her because she was holding on to it but still took her life. You can't sit back. If somebody's suicidal, we have to intervene. And it feels like crazy intervention, but we can't not intervene because someone like her, it's all the signs that she might take her life.
And there are two levels of intervention that you could interact here. One is calling Adult Protective Services, and you could just Google that in her area, look that up on the internet in her area, and what they'll do is send a social worker in to evaluate her and her situation and determine if she's at the level at which she needs treatment, even involuntarily, and they may provide that treatment for her. Now, the second level would be if you believe she's going to take her life now that she's in imminent danger, that you can actually call 911, and they would go, it would be paramedics and probably police, but they would go and also evaluate her and take her to a psychiatric hospital if need be. But I would say call Adult Protective Services now if you don't believe she's in imminent danger, because it's a less invasive intervention to use with her. Are you willing to make that call?
Oh, yes. My only other question is that this is going to sound horrible, but she's been saying it for so long, it's almost like you don't really think
she'll do
it.
it.
On the other hand, in that one time one time she means it is it,
And that's all it takes.
That's why they're saying you got to do something now.
That's all it takes is one time.
Yeah.
People look back when they've had a loved one that's taken their life, and they could see clear signs. Many of us see clear signs where somebody was reaching out or saying things to kind of talk themselves into doing it. So,
Karen, I'm sorry I didn't have more time, but thank you for calling. I hope what Alice and Sheri have said will be of help to you. I want to thank you guys for taking on this tough topic and dealing with it so square head on and with grace as you do.
And thanks to our listeners that were so open today to share their own experiences and pain and vulnerability with it.
Yeah.
Courageous folks.
I know.
I want to close with one of my favorite scriptures. I've done this before, but it's from Lamentations, and I do it because it fits this topic. And when Jeremiah surveyed the fallen Jerusalem, he was depressed. He was looking at rubble, death, destruction, horrible. And in a split second, he says, "Yet this I call to mind, and therefore I have hope. The steadfast love of God never fails. His mercies are new every morning. Great is thy faithfulness." I hope if you're dealing with depression, you'll consider this book, Understanding and Loving a Person with Depression. And I hope you'll consider that scripture passage, but love on those around you. We love you. We thank you. If you can help us with the gift, call us at 800 New Life. And we'll be back after this for the next program.
Thanks for listening. We hope this program has helped you by giving you insights for handling the challenges you face in your life. We want you to know that we're here for you, but you also need to know that New Life Live is a listener-supported ministry. To make your donation or to get any of the resources mentioned on today's program, call 1-800-NEW-LIFE. That's 1-800-639-5433, or write to us at New Life Ministries, P.O. Box 1029, Lake Forest, California, 92609. Please join us again tomorrow for New Life Live.